So hi everyone, welcome to the board training on Strongroom Avid Exchange. We're going to go through Strongroom in terms of reviewing an invoice, how to search for invoices, everything that you need to know as a board member in terms of Strongroom. My name is Kara Pusey. I am the Management Training Director for CMI, and I'm happy to walk you through this site. So here we go. I'm going to share my screen. Now, I did create a login of myself as a board member so that I can kind of show you everything that you'll see. So this is the main login page. If you are a board approver, this page will be where you see any invoices pending your approval. If there says there's no invoices pending your approval, then there are no invoices pending your approval. Now, there are certain situations where you think you might have them, like you do a search and you see them, and if that's the case, then please contact your manager. There just might be a little bug in the system that we have to fix. So um, you have any time that you're in any other tab of the software, you can hit My Invoice to go back to this home page. Over here on the side are also filters. You can actually see the invoices as a board member filtered by vendor. So if you want to look for pending approval invoices by a certain vendor when you're approving, you can look over the side over here as they have several different filters. So see, here's the vendor one. The other ones probably aren't going to be too helpful for you as you only have one association. Well, that's not true. We do have board approvers that have multiple associations. So you could approve invoices by association. Those are the case where we have a master and a sub association, and they're on the board for both. All right, so the invoice tab, this is where you're going to find the invoice search, where you'll be able to search invoices. So there's also the payments tab where you can do a payment search, but I'm going to show you when we do the search for the invoice, a better way to kind of view the payment history, and we'll be able to see exactly what you have access to, and then I'll tell you what I have access to, so that if you ever need more information, you can contact your manager. The associations tab isn't going to be very helpful for you because it's just going to show you your association in the sense of like the setup of your workflow. And then support, I would say before you go to Avid for support, come to CMI. Myself or your manager would be great. We can help you maybe first before looping in Avid. And then if we need to loop in Avid, we can do that for you. There's very few things that we can't fix, but there are some. So we'll go here to invoice search. Okay, so there's a couple of quick search options. So if you wanted all of the invoices that you approved today, that's an option here. Now I didn't approve any invoices, so it's not going to show anything up. I might flip over to mine so that I can show you something a little bit better. Or if you wanted to know the invoices you approved in the last 7 days, the last 30 days, you can do all of that from here. Invoices pending approval. Now this would be pending approval from anyone. So anyone in the workflow, if there was something pending approval over 2 days, then that's what that search would bring up, over a week, over 2 weeks. So there's a different way to search that might be better for pending approval. If you rejected an invoice and you're not able to, you don't maybe remember exactly what vendor it was, but you know you rejected it yesterday, then you can do a search last 7 days and see what invoices you rejected. This one's not going to help you because we don't use the action on the item of the software. So, all right. So just like any other search engine, the more information you put into the search, the more narrow of a search you're going to get. The other thing with Strongroom is if you sometimes have to select a status, but the software will tell you if you need to put in more information to your search. The most common search you're going to do is going to be, you'll select your association. I just picked the Addison because it was the first one in the list. And then from here, you'll pick your vendor. Now, with the vendor, the name does have to be kind of specific. So there's the, A and J. You sometimes have to put the and sign. Sometimes they spell out and D. If you're having issues finding the vendor, just let us know and we can try to search for it and get you a little bit better in terms of the name. But for the most part, you can select from there. Now, Avid is all about select and pressing buttons. So hitting enter at this point isn't going to create the search. You have to go all the way down here to the bottom and hit the search button. And now we have all of the PGE invoices. And then in this search, we can see the invoice number, the amount, where it was coded to. So you don't even have to click into the invoice like you did in Avid Exchange. You can actually see right here where it was coded to. The date of the invoice, the due date, and then the change date is the last time the invoice was changed. So that means the last time that the invoice was touched. So this would have been when the invoice was paid. So this invoice would have been paid on May 18th. Pay by, this is kind of like the transaction number, or in some cases they're like these ones were deleted, so it says check, which basically means that there wasn't a number. What account it was paid out of. We always pay out of the operating account. That's the checking account we use and everything like that. So it's always going to be your operating account. Now, if it's a reserve expense, we do move the money from the reserve to the checking account to then pay the expense. So it will be coded to the checking or to the reserve, but it will come out of the operating at the end of the transaction.
Kara, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course, Jim. What's up?
I'm wondering who decides the coding. In other words, is that us? Is that you? Is it the accounting staff when they look at an invoice? Who decides what code to use?
It's kind of a collaboration between the management team and the board. So the starting of an invoice is going to be with the assistant. So the assistant will review and code the invoice. Then the manager will review and check the coding of the invoice. And then it goes to the board to review. And then if you like the coding or don't like the coding, I'll show you when we get into an invoice what you can do.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would say it's a team effort between the management team and the board.
Thank
Our
you.
accounting team will sometimes, when they're reviewing the invoice to do the journal entry, might prompt the management team to say, hey, are you sure you want this to go there? It's unbudgeted, or previous invoices have gone here before. But for the most part, yeah, it's between the management team and the board.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, I had a question. This is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hi there. I can't remember who told me. Someone from CMI said that somewhere on this invoice page or approval page that you would see the balance in the operating fund.
Yes, and I will show you that when we
Oh.
get to an invoice. But yes,
Okay.
you are correct. So you can see, and now that's the balance of the operating account.
Right.
And by operating, I actually mean the checking account, because the checking account doesn't necessarily hold all of the operating funds. Sometimes we will keep, I'm going into financial 101 now, I'm sorry. Sometimes we'll keep some of the operating funds in the money market account so it earns a little bit more interest. So, but it does tell you the readily available funds in the checking account.
Okay. Well, this is the first time I've overseen finances for an organization where I didn't have access to the bank accounts, or at least to be able to view them.
So you do have access to the bank accounts, but that's going to be in Vantica.
Well, actually, I don't need it. I just, thinking about if I see like this screen and I've got several invoices to approve, and then I see there's not that much money in the operating account or the checking account, maybe the accountant missed it. I just don't want to have checks go out that aren't covered. And
Yeah, so we do a couple of different double checks before checks are even cut. So the last person of the workflow. So as I was saying before, it starts with the assistant, goes to the manager, goes to the board, sometimes two boards, whatever workflow that you have set up with us. We can do several different variations of flow. So some have us sign checks unless it's over 5,000, then the board signs, different things like that. So then once the last person, the board or CMI, the lovely Denise, approves it, then it goes to our accounting department. And accounting will then review both what's in the bank account and process the check. So if funds are not available, they won't process the check to be cut. The other thing is we do, what was I going to say? So we would just double check and make sure before we cut the check. And then if we do need funds, and it's, a simple, we can just move money from the money market because that's where some of the operating money is. Or if we need to borrow from reserves, then we do ask the board
okay,
for that, because that, borrowing from the reserves is a whole state statute process that, does have to take in consideration. Now it could just be, a cash flow in terms of a seasonal usage too. And so we do take all of that into consideration.
yeah, that was my main concern, was money coming out of the reserves, that it doesn't automatically happen. That was my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. So went through this. Now we'll go into a invoice. I actually want to find one that is in a different approval setting. I might have to give myself a little bit more permission. So I don't know if you've noticed, but you can actually type in the name of the vendor if you do it real fast and don't pause. All right, let's see if I have any unpaid invoices here. I gotta say, Addison, you have all your invoices paid. Makes it difficult for me. Okay, so what we can do now, if we'll filter by pending approval. See what is out there. Haha. All right, I'm gonna steal this one. So, yep, I'll take this one. All right. So this is a check request for Oregon. So it's probably for a Secretary of State. Oh no, this is this doesn't need to be in there, so we'll go through that in a minute. But we're going to just pretend like this is an invoice, which makes it easy for me to delete it later because it shouldn't be in the system. Okay. So here, as a board member, yeah, I'm going to stop sharing for just 30 seconds so that I can get this to where I can actually be in a group.
While you're getting to that location, Kara, I wanted to point out, if in the search, when you're searching for invoices, let's say you don't know the exact name of the contractor, for example, maybe it's Forensics Inc., or maybe it's Forensics LLC, whatever you can, and maybe it's Association of Forensics LLC. You don't know, all you know is forensics. You can put a star, like the asterisk, I guess, or no, it's called a star, like the little star, and then you could put forensics, and then you can put another star, and then it'll pull up anything with forensics in the name. So you don't have to actually remember the exact name.
I'll show you where you can do that in the search when we get back to the search.
The other thing, while she's looking for that, I was going to point out is we also have what we call positive pay. So we basically tell the bank exactly what invoices or what checks are cut and to whom. So if any of those checks are not to who we have let the bank know we were going to pay, then they don't clear. And that's a little bit associated with having enough funds in your checking account before the checks are cut. I'll hand it back over to Kara.
And then, yeah, so what Denise said too with the search, I'll show you, there's a couple of different sections down in the bottom that you can do keyword searches, which means if you know that, the name of the vendor has restoration in it, but you can't remember part of it, you can put in restoration and then the star and search for any vendor with your association that has the name restoration in it. You can also do that for a couple of other different fields as well. So here we're logged into the invoice. If you're a board approver, you'll have all these little buttons showing. And so from here, you'll have the association, the vendor, the amount, everything like that. So as a board, what you're reviewing is making sure that this is a legit, legitimate expense that you want to approve. Now, as I said before, it does go through two people before it gets to you. So in theory, we do filter out a lot of the invoices that, haven't been done yet or won't be done or for the wrong association or anything like that. But there are times where maybe something like that might slip through the cracks and get to you. And so as a board member, I suggest you making sure it's your association, your vendor, and something that has been done on the property. And if it hasn't been done on the property, you don't have to approve it, of course. You can either keep it in your queue or you can reject it back to the manager saying the work's not done, and then we can hold it for you until the work is done. So up here, you have the option to approve or the option to reject. Now, reject, you have to put in what they call an internal note. So if I scroll down here, let me get rid of this one. You have this internal note section where you can leave a note. Duplicate. And then it's kind of what would have been, doesn't work the same way, of course, but it's very similar to the comment that we had in Avid Exchange, except this doesn't comment an email to someone. It just leaves a note within the invoice. So the rejection part of this is the important part, because if you leave an internal note, it doesn't go to anyone. So if you want it to go to someone, the best way to do that is to reject the invoice back. So if you wanted to ask a question to the manager about the invoice, the best thing to do is to leave an internal note and then reject it back to them. And then they can review that and approve it back to you with comments in the internal note section. Interesting thing about the internal note section is you can delete the internal notes. However, in the history, we can see every note that's made. So even though it may be deleted from the internal note section, it's not deleted from the history. So that's one of the things that is very important to us, and I think to you as a board members about this software, is it has a complete digital footprint. There's nothing that you can do in the software that we don't see has been done, when it was done, and how it was done. So that we always know exactly what's going on with an invoice, when it was received, when it was processed by Avid, when it was approved by the assistant manager, if the amount was changed, what it was changed from, what it was changed to. So we have all of that record so that we know that exactly what happened. And once the invoice has been approved from the manager and from the assistant, they can't make any other edits. So that's why that rejecting back to them is very important, because then it puts it back in their queue. And if they need to change the amount, they can do that. If you don't reject it back, then I have to go in and change the amount, or Denise does, because we're the only ones that can access and most of the software. We can't even do everything in the software. as being the administrators. So just kind of something to know. You really have the delete button? That's intriguing. I think that's the case. Yeah, it really is. You do have a delete button. Huh. I would maybe not delete invoices. I would reject them and let the management team delete them. Just because there might, if the invoice is wrong, we can actually completely change the image of the invoice without having to delete it. Deleting invoices and putting in new invoices of the same invoice number can create duplication issues and potential double pay. So I would suggest just rejecting and leave the delete alone. In fact, I might try to figure out how to get rid of it. That won't be there for very long. If you wanted to download the image of the invoice, I'm going to show you a couple ways to do reports. But if you just wanted this one, the easiest way to do it is actually to use this PDF button, because then it will download the PDF. Even if you have a nice PDF reader here, sometimes the download becomes a web link as opposed to a physical PDF file. So if you want a PDF of the invoice, this is the best way to do it. A lot of people have been putting information in the check stub notes. That's literally what goes on the check, and we only have so many syllables. So just maybe be careful not to add anything there. All right, and then this one hasn't been paid, so let's go find one that's been paid, and which there was a lot of before, so that's nice. I must be under me. I am under me. Okay, hold on. I think when I logged in as myself, it really made me myself instead of my test one. Here we go. Okay. Now I want to see if the delete's there. It's not. Okay. And you still have the PDF. Perfect. This is what it should look like. That's what I thought it should look like. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to make it to where I could see your view because, as you can see, I have a lot more buttons. All right, let's find. Oh, so from here, you can go invoice and invoice search to get back to the search engine instead of having to go back to the main home page. So as a way to kind of quickly get to search, you can do that. And then down here is where we were talking about entering in keywords. So if you know part of the invoice number, you can put in the numbers that you know and then put in the little star. If you know, the account number would be like for the utility account number. So that one might not be readily available in terms of information that you have, but this is the vendor one that would be helpful. So if you, again, know that they have restoration in the name, you can type in restoration and the little star and find it that way. We do not have the vendors set up by vendor type. So that's not a good one. Expense account is going to be probably one of the major search, besides looking up by vendor, that you're going to find helpful, because expense account is the account code that the invoice is coded to. So if you wanted to pull up all of the invoices that are coded to property maintenance, or what we call 6690, you can put that here and then search all of the invoice. Oh, sorry, I forgot the association. And then search all of the invoices that are coded to 6690. And then you can select either all of them or whichever ones you want, and you can export to a report. And then here you have your options of what kind of export that you want. And it tells you exactly kind of how the file is going to be grouped. The one that I find the best so far that I think works well is the PDF of the search results. You can name the file right away if you want, or you can name it later. And then you have the option to include the PDF copies of the invoice images. So this will give you a summary of all of the invoices that you have selected. Plus, if you check this box, it will give you the images of all of the invoices. So I'm going to run this report just so we can see it.
Kara, I'm assuming that it's for a specific date range, or do you input the date range in the search, or? Because
Yeah,
it's
so
like,
you can set a date range if you want, or you can just run them all. I mean, so it's the more parameters you put into the search, the more narrowed specific data you're going to get. So in this case, I just did all of the invoices that were coded to 6690 property maintenance.
okay,
And
and
the
that's
system,
for this year, probably, I assume.
correct. So the
Yeah.
system started as of January 1st, 2023.
Okay.
So that's the only history that we have in this software. Of course, the previous software, which is the same company, Avid Exchange, has all of the invoices from December of 2016 to the end of 2022. And we can still give you access to that software if you don't have it now and you want to do invoice hunting from previous years. That's still available and will continue to be available to us. All right, let's see if you can see this. Can you see this? Yeah. Yeah, it's tiny. Let me make it bigger. Okay. So then you have the summary, and this lists it by vendor, the number of invoices, the amount, and then if I scroll down here, I have more detail. Let me just make it a little bit bigger. So this has it by vendor again, but then it has the details of the invoice number, the date of the invoice, has it been paid, the date, the status, so more information. And then we'll have all of the copies of the invoices. And so that's one of the reports that you can run in Strongroom. And then to get out of this, you just press close. And then if you wanted to do a new search, right over here, new search, you can go back to this screen. If you hit the back button, it will take you back to your original search.
Hey, Carla, how do we find out the numbers like 6690? Do you have a list of those?
Yeah, so those are located on the budget or on the financial statement.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah, so in the income statement of the financial, you'll have the code and the name of the code on the income statement. And that's going to be for both operating and reserve. And when you do the expense code in here, you're pulling both operating and reserve expenses. So you would have to click into an invoice. I don't know if any of these are going to be reserved. They're all like little dollar amounts. You would have to click into the invoice to find out if it's operating or reserve, or you can actually hover over. So right here, the department tells you if it's operating or reserve. So that's how you can tell where it's being coded in terms of that. Or some associations also have special projects, and some invoices need to be coded to those special projects. And that department would be how you would determine, did that get coded to the special project or the other fund that it should go to. Some associations also have residential and commercial and shared. And so if something's supposed to just be residential, it would be designated under this department as residential operating or residential reserve. And so you'll see that there as well. Yes, Penny.
how do you tell the difference in grouping 7675 and 7690? We have both reserve and operating. And going through some of them here today, I can't tell whether it's in the operating side or the reserve side.
So when you open up the invoice, it's going to be listed right here, either operating or reserve.
But it looks like everything's being paid under operating. But
So everything is paid out of the checking account, which is considered to be the operating. But when you're looking at the coding, that's where it's going to tell you what fund
it only says 7675 or 7690. Shouldn't there be a prefix to it that tells whether it's operating or reserves?
So every pay from is going to be the operating account, whether it be operating or reserve. So this pay from is always going to be operating because we pay every expense out of the checking account, which is considered to be the operating account.
Right, I understand that, but
So
right now,
to find out if it is an operating or a reserve expense, you're going to check over here. And if it always says operating, then yeah, everything's being coded to the operating. So
all
this
right,
is your indication right here.
all right, I'll have to go back and check. Okay, thank you.
And if you want, Penny, afterwards, we can look up a couple of them too, and I can tell you from my point of view what I'm seeing.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah.
I just looked on one of our invoices and it shows operating when it should have been reserved. So what do I do with that?
Now, that is a very good question, Mark. So the question is, has it been approved or not?
Not yet.
Okay, if you haven't approved it, then you're put in an internal comment. This needs to go to the reserve and reject it back to your manager.
Yeah, I didn't even think of it until you were just talking about the different, and this was something that happened last week. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to catch all of that, but I'll try.
Well, and that's part of where reviewing the financial statement's also going to come into play too. So when you're reviewing the financial statement, both us as the manager and you as a board member, that's some of the things that we should be looking for is, do things need to be reclassed? Did they accidentally get put to the operating when they should have been reserve, or vice versa? So we got a couple of different mechanisms where we can fix those coding errors if they do occur.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so in the invoice, you have this payment tab. So this is payment authorized. Darn, I grabbed the wrong one. Thought it said it was approved. It's this one. Okay. Okay, so you got payment details right here. So this lets you know that it was paid by check, which may or may not be true, the amount, and then the date it was paid. So if we click on this check number, it's going to take us to more information about the payment. So this actually is going to let us know that it was an e-payment. So it was a check that was processed electronically, and it's cleared. It cleared on 5/31/23 at 5 a.m. And then we can view the history of that approval. Now, if it is paid by check, we have the ability to pull up the canceled check if that ever becomes an issue. I just learned how to do this last week. It's very exciting. And so as a board member, you can pull up here and see exactly when it was approved. If it's pending, it will say that as well. It will say here pending approval or pending processing, or and everything like that. And it won't have a clear date. It will have an updated date. The other delivery options that are available, and this is something that the vendor sets up directly with AvidXchange. So they choose how they want to be paid. We don't. Typically, the default is by check. And then we try to get as many people to get electronic payments as possible because it's just faster processing time. mean, right now the mail says that it can be 10 business days before you get, your mail. And so that's a long time, especially with the fact that some invoices only give you a 15-day window to make payments, and we only process invoices twice a month. So that's very important. The 9th and the 24th of the month is very important to make sure that you're getting your invoices approved by those times. And the more often you approve them, the better. There is possibilities that we can potentially process invoices faster than the 9th and the 24th if you approve them. So, twice is great, more is better, but whatever you can do is great as well. Okay, so let's go back to the invoice. Oh, sorry. Apparently that takes you there. All right, what else? Expense department. So this would be where you could look up everything that it's paid either to the operating or to the reserve or to a special fund. So if you wanted to pull up they don't have a special assessment, so I can't do that. But if you wanted to pull up everything that was coded to like your special assessment reconstruction fund, you can put that in here as an expense department and pull up all of the expenses for that particular department is what the system says. We call them funds. So it's kind of the nuances of that.
Here, a question for you from Jim. So how do we know what department to use? If I want to do the reserves, what do I put in that square, in that rectangle?
Reserve.
Just put in reserve and it does it automatically?
Yeah. It's going to pull up every code that has been used in the reserve side of, wow, they only have one expense to the reserve this year so far. So, which is actually kind of typical for this building. They have, they've spent a lot of money over the last few years, and so they're in a good spot right now, but different story.
The key is there's no special department. You just put
Yeah.
in.
You just put in reserve. Now, for your association, you guys have the special assessment loan fund.
Yes.
And so you have expenses that are expensed there. So you could search that specific fund for your association to see what expenses have gone there.
Okay. And what word would I use for that?
Special assessment. I think that's
Okay.
what it's called, if I remember correctly.
All right, good.
Putting me on the spot for your association. Okay. Let's see. Just double checking and making sure I've covered everything I wanted to cover. Okay. Let me go back into an invoice. Okay, maybe it's a new invoice. Okay, so it is here. I thought maybe I had a different tab. Okay, so here you can kind of see part of the history. So this kind of tells you the basics of when it was created into the system, when it was processed by Avid. So they do the data entry, the basics of, putting in the association and everything like that. And then this is the assistant who got it, and then the manager who approved. I gotta say, we did really well on this one. And then if you wanted more history information, you can view that here. And then you can do an audit history, which basically, or the origin history. So this tells us how it got entered into the system. So we can find out exactly like how things get into the system and everything like that. And you can view that too. I know this has become an issue when sometimes vendors say they haven't been paid or things like that. You can kind of see the status of the invoice there too. We can see it as well and answer the questions, but you have access. I just wanted you to see that you had that. All right. Denise, am I missing anything? That's all I have on my notes. All right, do we have any more questions?
Carrie, you didn't go over the dates down below. Is there anything special we should know about the
Not
date?
really. They're just like any other date search. So you can select the range yourself, or you can put in a specialized range.
Okay,
So this
that's
is
helpful.
the date of the invoice. If there's a due date listed on the invoice, and then the date the invoice was paid. We don't really schedule invoice payments, so it's something you can do in the system. I don't suggest it. We just try to process things as we get them and not try to schedule payments. We just, do them as they come. Last change date. So change date is anytime someone has touched the invoice, that's the last change date. So the last time the invoice was touched. I don't really know why you would want to search that personally, but it's an option. And then creation date, the day it was created into the software. So when it was sent in and processed. And then accounting date isn't going to, that one's not going to be used probably very often. We do put in purchase orders, but they're the NX number from Vantica. That's typically what the purchase order number is. So unless it's on the invoice, it doesn't get into the system. But when you're in Vantica, you'll be able to see a little bit more. Internal notes, you can actually search keywords for internal notes too. So if you sent a note for an invoice of specific and you can't remember the invoice, you can look it up by internal notes if you'd like. That is an option. And then some of this up here too, because I didn't go through all of it. We did most of this, but invoice amount, you can do either a specific amount. So if you know the invoice was $465, but you can't remember the vendor, you can search $465. If you know it was over 400 and less than 500, you can do a range of 400 to 500 and see if you can find the invoice that way too. Last change, you can search by the last invoices that were approved or rejected or held or anything like that. Approval step. This is one that I use often to try to figure out if my board members are approving their invoices. Because I can pull up what invoices are on board approval for that association. I think this one only had one. Probably should have picked a little bit more activity, my bad. So see, this is the only invoice pending board approval. Image type, I don't think will be very helpful. As most of our images are either emailed or exported. And so that's not typically something you'll know, but the status I think will be really important for you too. So if you're looking for anything that's pending, or if you want to see all the paid invoices or deleted, then those are going to be you can select that as an option. That's kind of all of the search. And then I think we went through all of the invoice, but let me just double check really quick. This header information is also very important. You can kind of see up here some of the basic information. So this is, we talked about it earlier about being able to see the bank account balance. And you know what? You don't get to, because normally it's right over here. So I think your best option for checking if the funds are available is you can check with us, the management team, or Vantica. I'm kind of surprised it doesn't say. I just want to see. I make sure. I'm gonna pick on one of mine. Oh, Jim, I'm gonna pick on you.
Okay, sounds fine.
So see, I can see the balance of the checking account.
That's probably why she said it's right up there. And I said, I can't
And
see
you
it.
said, no, it's not, because yeah, you
I
don't
see.
have,
Yeah.
you don't
Okay.
have access to it. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because it's one of those things where it's like, we see more than you do. And so sometimes we just have to be to kind of see what you see. So yeah, you don't see it, but we do. And we can get that to you.
Can you give us your phone number, Kara?
Sure, I'll put my contact information in the chat. But Mark, I think we've talked, right?
Yeah, but I somehow didn't put it down for some reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. You can contact me anytime.
Oh, I got to turn on the chat now. Okay, there we go.
And Mark, I think I have your email, so I can send you an email too. All right. Well, I know I have your email. I have it. There's me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So are there any other questions about Strongroom?
Yeah, I have one, Kara. Going back to the my invoice page, and
Sure.
say you have 2 invoices showing up that need approval, and you check the box. Is there another step you have to do after that? Can you just close out?
All right, let's see you really quick. Hold on. Let me make sure, because I can.
I asked that because it seemed to me like I was approving things and they wouldn't go
All right.
away.
So if you check this box, and I'll
Right.
have to fix this later because I'm going to approve it and I'll have to put it back. But and you hit approve,
Mhm.
it takes you to this page.
Okay.
And you can select, and then from here you hit confirm,
Okay.
and then it tells you, okay, your transaction was successful, and then it's approved. And so we can go back and we see that it's there. It's gone.
Okay. Great. Okay. So
Okay.
I'm doing it correctly. That's what I learned to do.
Hunt that invoice down and fix it. So yeah, so you can approve it that way as well. That's a good point. Thank you, Tom. So you can approve it from that page if you want to. I like to open up the invoice and kind of see everything.
Mhm.
You have the ability to kind of look at a snapshot of the invoice. What do you want? Oh, you want a date range. Okay. Oh, there are none. Logging in and out and back and forth. Okay. So when you're here, if you hover over the invoice number, you get a kind of status of the invoice. So you see the amount, you see the property, the vendor, and then you see the code and everything. This is go to one that's a little bit different. Where it was coded, who last approved it, so you can process the invoice from there. But the difference that you get when you click in here is you get to see the invoice and make sure that you like it too. So if you're okay without seeing it, you can approve it that way too. But I like to see it. All right. Any other questions?
Kara, this is Dave Baker,
Oh, hi,
and
Dave.
I just have a general question because I like to get a sense of the size of systems and what's the volume of. Do you know the volume of transactions generally per day, per week, per month that CMI does, and how many checks are? This is for all of your whole operation.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, You know, you got to think we manage 160 associations, and
Okay.
assume that each property has somewhere around, you know, 2 to 10 invoices a day. Some of our big high rises can get up to 10 invoices a day every day. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it can be quite a few thousand of invoices that are processing through um, a day and a week. We do have a lot of systems in place to make sure that um, there's a lot of review happens to the invoices before they go out.
Yeah, it gives me, I mean, I've worked with some really big systems, but I haven't for a while, so getting my head into this has been a good thing. I mean, I recognize it, but one of the things that, of course, the new systems have is really, and it looks like this has a really good um, trail for approvals,
Mhm.
electronic approvals. I mean, everything's electronic approval. So,
Yeah, it has an entire audit system of every step that is taken in the invoice. You can't change it, edit it. No, not even yeah, Avid can change the history.
yeah, I'm old enough to know that systems that didn't have much of that stuff. So it's kind of nice to see.
Yeah. And I think it also, gives you that reassurance that, there's we can't do anything. Not that we would or anything like that, but it's just not possible. The system won't even allow us. And in fact, the people who can cut checks in CMI can't create anything in Strongroom. So like our accounting team cannot create invoices in Strongroom.
Mhm.
They don't
That's
have that.
good. Mhm.
We do that as a check and balance system, right? You don't want the person who can cut a check to also be able to
Right.
create the invoice. So we've restricted that to allow to prevent any type of fraud.
Yeah, that's standard practice. So,
Yeah.
well,
Jim,
it's just
I do have a
really,
question.
pardon me?
Oh, David, yeah. Did you have more?
No, I just wanted to thank you for putting us on. It's, I learned a lot. Now I can go in and dig around and see how it works. So,
Kara, one comment I have for you. One thing I learned today is that it would be helpful to Michelle, your assistant, if she had a better idea of what the coding should be as she begins her processing. In other words, if our engineer can say this is an operating expense or a project or a reserve project, that would seem to help Michelle, correct?
Yeah, if we know going into
Yeah.
An invoice kind of where to put it, and it's different than what we usually get, right? So if it's not like electric or gas or water or sewer,
Right.
something special, then yeah, if we know where to code it already to begin with, that is very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
I know some associations will designate when they approve the expense where it comes from. So we've approved to do this work with J.R. Johnson. It's going to be a reserve expense and we want it coded here. Then we already know and it's there. Also, part of the budgeting process, we set up a reserve budget where we would assign the codes as well. So Jim, just like for your association, we're going through and we're updating the reserve budget so
Right.
that we have the codes and a better budget for the financial.
Yes.
So you would do that with the budget.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Tara, I have a question.
Yeah, Ron.
Our treasurer is the person who has access to this accounting system, and as president, I would like to have access too. Is that a problem to have more than one board member?
No, so we have the ability to add either additional board approvers or board reviewers. So you have the ability to view everything. You just don't get all the annoying emails that you need to approve invoices.
That might be handy. And it's two more questions. The person who approves, I think you said, could change coding if they saw coding was incorrect. Is that
So they
true?
can't change it, but they
can't.
can reject it back to the manager to change it.
Mm.
Okay, so the second part of that question is, we have 3 different accounts. We have our mid-rise, our townhomes, and then shared. If we find something's allocated incorrectly, we would go through the same process.
Exactly, yeah. So if something was supposed to go to the mid-rise but went to the shared, then that you can reject it back and say, hey, this is actually just for the mid-rise.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So Kara, this is Dave. I'm gonna have to sign off, but again, this was a good session.
Thank you, Dave. Have a great night.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
Kara, thank you. I have to sign off also.
Thank you, Jim. Well, thank you all for coming. And if you do think of any other questions, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer them. Or if you have additional board members who would benefit from viewing this video, we can send you the link, but it will again be posted shortly. Oh, it depends on how our translating of the video goes. Sometimes it takes us a minute to get it to work. It's also available on YouTube, CMI's YouTube page. And
A question from Penny.
oh, Penny, yeah, sorry. My pictures of everyone is moved somewhere.
I didn't get in till late because they didn't send me a link until 1:45. So I missed the first 15 minutes. And then I have several questions. So if everybody else is all finished up, then I can kind of go over what I would like to ask. So I didn't know who else wanted to communicate with you.
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And then Penny, I will log in as, oh, I think I already am me. Yeah, and we can look at your account.
Okay.
So hold on just a second. I gotta find the recording. There it is.